Davis speaks softly tonight. He welcomes you in, asks gently, "Where are you listening from? And how has your evening been?" He invites you to settle, breathe, and relax for a quiet story from the village lanes. A calm morning waits ahead, the kind that feels safe, the kind that feels still. But one small sound will break that calm, a quiet sound at the worst possible moment, and it begins sooner than anyone expected. Miss Marple sat by her window with her first cup of tea. The early light was pale, soft, still. The lane outside was quiet. No carts, no footsteps, just the hush of a village not yet awake. She liked these minutes. Simple minutes. Predictable minutes. Steam rising from her cup, the warmth settling into her hands, the feeling that nothing urgent existed. She watched the roofs across the lane, faint frost on each one, smoke rising from only one chimney. The baker's house, always early, always steady. A cat crossed the road, slow, careful, tail twitching at nothing in particular. Miss Marple breathed in. The day felt calm, too calm, the kind of calm that waits, the kind that holds something behind it. She noticed the sparrows, or rather, she noticed the lack of them. They were late. Birds were never late. Not here, not in Street Rowanford. She frowned lightly. Only a little. A small note of curiosity. Not concern. Not yet. She lifted her cup again, sipped, held it near her cheek for warmth. Small pleasures mattered. Small comforts mattered. Then it came. A single sound. Sharp, clear, out of place, out of time. The bell tower. One toll. Just one. A deep, slow ring that cut straight through the morning calm. Miss Marple froze. Not from fear, from logic. The bell tower was locked. It had been locked for months. No one had the key. No one was allowed to use it. It was under repairs. Scaffolding still wrapped the lower half. So why did it ring? Her mind shifted. Tea forgotten. Calm. Broken. Thoughts moving in clean, straight lines. Someone made it ring. Someone pulled that rope. Someone stood inside a place no one should enter. She leaned closer to the window, listened, waited for another ring. None came. Just silence again. A thicker silence than before. She looked at the lane. Empty. Still. But not peaceful now. Not harmless. A different kind of stillness. A stillness that follows an action. A stillness that hides someone's footsteps. A stillness that holds a question. Miss Marple placed her cup down. Very gently. She never rushed. Rushing ruined clear thought. She reached for her shawl, pulled it over her shoulders. Her routine had changed. The day had changed. All because of one sound. She checked the clock. Too early for the church caretaker. Too early for the vicar. Too early for any authorized visit. No explanation fit. Not a single innocent one. She stepped toward the door. Paused. Listened again. Nothing. No voice. No movement. No second toll. But her instinct was firm. Something had happened. Something small. Something quiet. Something someone tried to hide. She unlocked her cottage door, opened it slowly. Cold air came in first. Then the faint scent of frost and chimney smoke. She stepped outside, closed the door behind her. Her eyes moved toward the distant tower. Its shadow stood still, its rope still hidden, its bell still quiet. But it had spoken once, and once was enough. Miss Marple tightened her shawl. Her pace remained slow, measured, controlled. Something was wrong. She didn't know what yet, but she would. Someone made it ring, but no one has the key. Miss Marple stands. Something is wrong. Miss Marple reached Rowanford Manor just after 8. Frost still clung to the hedges. Smoke curled from the chimneys in thin, steady lines. The manor looked calm, but calm could lie. A winter breakfast had been arranged for the villagers, a tradition. A friendly one. Hot. Porridge, warm bread, stewed apples, simple comforts that made cold mornings softer. Miss Marple stepped inside. Heat welcomed her first, then voices. Quiet ones, polite ones, but layered with something else. The drawing room was already half full, scarves undone, gloves tucked into pockets, boots leaving melting patches on the floor. Mrs. Hargland greeted people near the hearth. Always cheerful, always too cheerful. Her hands moved quickly, too quickly, a trait she had when hiding worry. Mr. Dyer poured tea for anyone near the sideboard. His smile was steady, his shoulders were not. One kept lifting, dropping, lifting again, a sign of pressure he pretended not to feel. Miss Marple moved slowly through the room. She liked seeing people before they noticed her. Their unfiltered selves said more than polite greetings ever could. The winter breakfast looked ordinary. It felt ordinary. But she had lived long enough to know the most ordinary mornings often sat on top of something else, something waiting. The villagers talked in short bursts. Weather, frozen pipes, a fox seen near the church lane. Nothing unusual, nothing sharp, nothing alarming, except for the pauses, the micro-pauses, the ones that slip between sentences. Light, quick, almost invisible. Miss Marple caught the first one near the window. Two women whispering. One laughed. Too loud. The other hushed her. Too fast. The kind of hush meant to bury something. She caught the second near the hearth. Mr. Lenton greeting Mr. Hale. Hands shook. Eyes did not meet. A rigid smile from Hale. A forced chuckle from Lenton. She caught the third near the breakfast table. The maid Anna placing plates too carefully. Her hands trembled. Barely. But enough. Miss Marple noticed. Anna always worked with precise calm. Today she looked startled, as if carrying two thoughts, the task at hand, and something she wished she did not know. At the far end of the room, the butler, Mr. Gorse, stood stiff as an iron post. His chin lifted an inch too high, his voice a note too formal. Formality was safe. He used it like armor. Someone had unsettled the staff. She didn't know who yet, but someone had. A young man brushed past her, nearly knocking her teacup. He apologized quickly, too quickly, then avoided her eyes. People avoided her eyes only when they feared being read. She took a seat near the corner, quiet corner, observant corner, her favorite place in any room. From there she saw the whole picture. Shapes, patterns, movements, connections forming without words. Mrs. Hargland talking too brightly to Anna, Anna nodding too fast. Mr. Dyer watching them both. Gorse glancing at the doorway every few seconds, as if expecting someone or dreading someone. Not fear, not shock. Something else. Anticipation mixed with tension. Like the room held a secret only half of them knew. Miss Marple folded her hands, watched, quietly, listened to the small things. The things people tried to hide. The things they failed to hide. Breakfast plates clinked. Chairs scraped. Voices rose and fell. But one thing remained constant. The undercurrent. Light. Thin. But present. Everyone smiled. But someone shouldn't have. Someone whose smile did not fit. Someone whose ease was false. She saw it. One face. One expression that froze for a heartbeat too long. A glance that held too much knowledge. Too much awareness. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. Only slightly. Just enough. She hadn't yet spoken to the person. She didn't need to. A single look said enough. Something had happened before this breakfast. Something connected to the bell. Something connected to the manner. Something threaded through the smiles in this room. And only one person knew the whole truth. One person who smiled when they shouldn't have. Everyone smiles, but one person shouldn't. Miss Marple sees a look she cannot ignore. The room carried a hum of polite chatter. Not loud, not lively. Just the usual morning warmth of villagers sharing a winter breakfast. But warmth could hide things. Miss Marple knew that well. She watched the patterns, the movements, the rhythm of a room that wanted to look ordinary, and failed. The first slip happened near the sideboard. Anna carried a tray of cups. Simple task. Daily task. She had done it 100 times without a tremor. Today the tray tilted, just slightly. Enough for 2 cups to slide. One rattled against the metal edge. One nearly fell. Anna caught it, barely. Her breath caught with it. Her eyes flicked toward Mr. Gorse. A small, frightened flick. Gone in a second. Miss Marple saw all of it. Not the slip. The fear. The second incident followed too soon. A sharp cough from Mr. Lenton. Not a normal cough. A startled cough. The kind a person makes when they see something or someone they didn't expect to see. He pressed a bride, hand to his chest, forced a smile, said it was nothing. But he kept glancing over his shoulder, at the door, at the hallway, as if expecting someone to enter, or hoping they wouldn't. Miss Marple lifted her teacup, took a slow sip, watched, listened, waited. The third moment came near the hearth. A guest reached for a glass of juice. A simple reach, but their hand shook. Shook enough that the glass wobbled, tipped, nearly fell off the table. Mr. Dyer grabbed it in time. "Careful," he said. Too quickly, too tightly. His hand held the glass as if it were evidence. The guest flushed, murmured an apology, looked away. But Miss Marple noticed the direction of that glance, toward the window, and toward one person standing near it, the person with the smile that didn't fit. The fourth moment was quieter, smaller, almost nothing. A woman speaking to Mrs. Hargland paused mid-sentence, only for half a breath. Her eyes widened for a blink. Then she continued, speaking as if nothing had happened. Miss Marple looked behind her. Nothing unusual, no movement, no signal. But something had been seen, something quick, something not meant to be noticed. Small things, tiny things, but tiny things mattered. They were the first threads of a pattern, threads people rarely meant to show. Miss Marple leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed, her mind alert. These were not accidents, not coincidences, not nervous winter hands. These were reactions, instinctive ones, triggered by something or someone in the room. She watched the door, the hallway, the staff, the guests. Each movement painted the same picture: fear behind politeness, tension behind smiles, knowledge behind silence. Something small had happened, something very small, small enough to slip between conversations, small enough to hide in clinking plates and quiet laughter, but not small enough to escape her. Miss Marple folded her hands. Her eyes softened, her mind sharpened. Whatever had begun before she entered the manor, before breakfast, before greetings. The bell toll made sense now, or rather, it made sense that nothing made sense. A whisper of movement behind her, a shift in the air, someone watching her, someone waiting to see if she had noticed. She had. A tiny mistake. That was not a mistake. Something small has already begun. The room carried a thin tension now. Soft, polite voices, gentle clinks of spoons, but underneath, a quiet strain. Miss Marple felt it settle, like a cold thread pulled through warm fabric. She watched the guests move about. Small talk, forced smiles, hands held a little too tightly around cups. People pretending everything was fine. Then it happened. Fast, too fast. Mr. Hale, standing near the hearth, stiffened. His hand released his teacup. It slipped, dropped, shattered on the floor with a sharp, clean crack that cut through every voice in the room. Before anyone reacted to the sound, he collapsed. Straight down. No stumble, no trip, no warning. Just down. The room froze. Air seemed to stop. Conversations snapped into silence mid-syllable. No one breathed for a moment. Mrs. Hargland gasped first. A short, sharp gasp that didn't fully escape her throat. Her hand flew up, covering her mouth. The maid, Anna, backed away, hands trembling, eyes wide, as if she had seen this exact moment in her mind long before it happened. "Mr." Dyer dropped to his knees beside the fallen man, his face pale, his movements stiff. Not quite panic, not quite readiness, something in between. "Doctor?" he called. His voice cracked. Too thin. too frightened. Dr. Merton pushed through the small crowd forming around the body. He knelt without hesitation, fingers moving to check the pulse, ear close to the chest, hands steady, eyes focused. Miss Marple didn't rush. She never did. She stood, moved closer with slow, measured steps, and stopped just at the edge of the circle forming around Mr. Hale. Her eyes did not look at the fallen man first. She looked at the people around him, the reactions, the flinches, the faces that turned away too quickly, the ones that didn't turn away at all, the ones that watched too closely. Fear, shock, guilt. She read each emotion as if each face carried a small page of a book only she knew how to read. Dr. Merton pressed his fingers again against Hale's neck. Longer this time. His brow creased. Not in confusion. Not in effort. In certainty. A certainty he didn't want to speak aloud yet. Mrs. Hargland knelt beside him, whispering Hale's name, her voice shaking, her hand resting near his shoulder but not touching it. People reached out, then stopped before contact. Fear of making anything worse. Miss Marple noticed the cup fragments, thin porcelain pieces, juice spreading slowly, a scent of something slightly bitter underneath the sweetness. Too faint, for others, not too faint for her. Someone whispered, "He fainted." Another said, "He slipped." Another muttered, "He stood too quickly." Miss Marple shook her head once, barely, almost invisible. He didn't faint. He didn't slip. He didn't stumble. There had been no hesitation in the fall, no instinctive try to catch himself. It was the kind of collapse that came from inside. Sudden. Final. She took one small step forward, her eyes locked on Dr. Merton's expression. He understood the truth. And she did too. The doctor finally sat back on his heels. His shoulders dropped slightly. A long breath escaped him. He looked up, met Miss Marple's eyes for a brief second. And in that second, she had confirmation. The kind no one wanted to hear. Silence thickened, spread, held the room in a tight grip. Everyone waiting. Everyone afraid of the words coming next. Dr. Merton spoke quietly, barely above a whisper, but every person in the room heard it. He is already gone. He didn't faint. He didn't stumble. He is already gone. The news left Rowanford Manor before the doctor even stood up. It moved fast. Too fast. A quiet slip from one worried mouth to another, then onto the lane, then across the village. By the time Miss Marple stepped outside, the air already carried it. A faint hum, an unsettled murmur drifting between cottages and shop fronts. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just the steady spread of worry. Rowanford was small. Small villages never held secrets for long. Not even early morning secrets. Miss Marple walked toward the square, her steps slow, measured, thoughts neatly arranged. She knew the pattern well. Panic always traveled faster than facts. The bakery door was open. Warm air spilled out, along with raised voices. They said he choked. Mrs. Pelham murmured. No, Mr. Briggs argued. It was his heart, always looked pale. Miss Marple paused by the doorway, listened. Carefully, a younger man spoke next. He fell after drinking the juice. I'm telling you something was wrong with it. Mrs. Pelham gasped. Her hand flew to her apron. Oh, don't say that. My cousin drank the same juice last year. Miss Marple stepped inside for a loaf of bread. They lowered their voices instantly. Instantly, meaning they were hiding nothing from her, except the things they were eager to tell each other. She paid, thanked the baker, and stepped out again. Near the greengrocer's stall, two women whispered sharply. He looked frightened before he fell, one said. Maybe he saw someone, the other replied. Someone, not something. Interesting. A boy carrying newspapers rushed by. Extra, extra, panic at Rowanford Manor breakfast, he shouted. Completely inaccurate, utterly predictable. Miss Marple kept walking, her shawl tight around her, her mind filing every rumour away. Across the square, Mr. Lenton and Mr. Hale's brother stood in a tense argument. Words clipped, short, sharp. You were standing right next to him. And that means nothing. Both men stepped back when they noticed her, guilt in one face, fear in the other. Neither spoke again. Silence soon replaced accusation. Confusion grew with every conversation. Everyone had a version of the truth. Everyone wanted theirs to be correct. Everyone wanted to sound informed. No one wanted to admit they were guessing. Miss Marple slowed her steps, listened to the rhythm of the rumors, each one different, each one shaped by fear, each one missing the same thing, logic. A cluster of villagers near the fountain whispered the newest claim. He was poisoned. A woman breathed. Her friends leaned closer, eyes wide, hands gripping baskets. The word poisoned always traveled the fastest. But Miss Marple said nothing. Not yet. Not until she understood each thread. Every rumor contained a grain of truth. A grain, not the whole. She passed the post office. 2 men stood near the bicycles. He had enemies, one said. Oh yes, the other replied. Plenty. Miss Marple halted, only for a moment. Enemies? Interesting. Very interesting. She moved on. Quiet. Focused. The village buzzed around her in fragments. Bits of talk, half-truths, wrong assumptions, wild fictions. Everyone thought they knew the truth. Everyone believed they were close. Everyone wanted to be the first to understand what happened at the manor. But Miss Marple looked toward the distant bell tower, its silent shadow, its cold outline against the pale sky. The bell had rung first. Everything else came after. She tightened her grip on her shawl. Cold wind brushed past her. Voices swirled behind her. She kept walking, calm, certain, her mind already working through the pieces. Everyone thinks they know the truth. No one is even close. Inspector Graves reached Rowanford Manor before noon. A tall man, calm voice, straight posture. But his eyes moved quickly, the eyes of someone who had learned that quiet villages were never as harmless as they looked. Miss Marple greeted him with a small nod. He returned it with the kind of respect he saved for very few people. They had worked beside each other before. He knew her mind. Sharp, precise, dangerous to any lie. He stepped into the drawing room first, took in the faces, the tension, the nervous hands, the tight smiles. He noticed the fear, but not the reason for it. Not yet. Everyone remained seated, he said. Just routine questions. Routine. Miss Marple almost smiled. Nothing about this was routine. Not the fall, not the room's reactions, not the frightened looks that kept passing between staff and guests. Inspector Graves interviewed 3 people first. 3 simple statements, 3 simple contradictions. Statement 1, from Mrs. Harglin. He was cheerful all morning, not a hint of trouble. Her hands shook slightly as she spoke. Not with grief, with something else. Something closer to guilt, or fear of guilt. Statement 2, from Mr. Dyer. He looked pale, unsteady. I told him to sit, but he wouldn't listen. His voice was smooth, too smooth. Miss Marple watched the way he pressed his thumb against his palm, a nervous habit. He only did it when he tried too hard to appear calm. Statement 3, from Anna, the maid. He didn't look pale. He looked frightened. A different tone, a different truth. Her eyes darted toward the hallway every few seconds as if she expected someone to appear, or feared someone already watching. 3 accounts, none matched, not even close. Inspector Graves wrote each one down. Neat handwriting, even letters. But his brow tightened. He sensed the problem. He sensed the lies. But he didn't yet know which direction they pointed. He asked more questions. Simple ones, clear ones. But every answer held a tremor, or a pause, or a glance at someone else in the room. Everyone was hiding something. Not necessarily murder, but something. Secrets floated beneath the surface, brushing against one another, shifting the truth out of shape. Miss Marple sat quietly by the window, her hands folded neatly, her eyes half-lowered. Anyone might have thought she wasn't paying attention at all, but she listened to every tone, every hesitation, every wrong detail. She noticed the twitch in Mr. Lenton's jaw when Hale's name was mentioned. She noticed Anna gripping her apron whenever Mr. Gorse entered the room. She noticed Gorse himself refusing to meet her eyes. That was new and meaningful. Gorse avoided her only when something was very wrong. The inspector finished his first round of interviews. He stepped aside to review his notes. Long lines, short fragments, contradictions on every page. He exhaled slowly. "You'd think," he murmured, "in a village this small, someone would simply tell the truth." Miss Marple looked up, her voice gentle. "People often tell the truth, Inspector, just not the one you expect." He paused, studied her face, waited for more. But she let the silence do the work. The room filled with it, heavy, uneasy, pressing down on the guests like a slow, tightening clasp. Someone shifted. Someone swallowed too loudly. Someone whispered the wrong thing, barely audible, but enough to catch Miss Marple's ear. One word, one careless word, one slip that didn't fit any of the stories told before. She turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowed by a fraction. No one noticed, except the person who had spoken, their face drained of color. Miss Marple had heard what she needed. The first crack in the wall of lies. Everyone claims innocence. Someone slips, with one wrong word. Miss Marple waited until the morning noise softened. Questions drifted. Accusations quieted. Inspector Graves stepped outside to speak with constables. She used the quiet moment. Calm steps, straight posture, a mind already sorting the contradictions she had heard. Rowanford's small parish office sat beside the church. A narrow building, old brick, cold windows, a place few villagers visited unless they needed certificates or wished to forget something. Miss Marple entered. Mr. Hollingby, the clerk, looked up from his desk, a polite smile, thin but harmless. "Ah, Miss Marple," he said. "A cold day to be out." "A cold day for many things," she replied softly, her tone gentle, her reasoning sharp. She asked for access to the older village records. Hollingby hesitated, only a second, but hesitation always meant there was something worth seeing. "They're quite dusty," he warned. "Dust rarely frightens me." He unlocked a side door, a small records room, shelves lined with leather-bound registers, boxes stacked unevenly, old papers breathing faint scents of ink and time. Miss Marple moved slowly, hands passing over labels, dates, names, incidents. She found what she needed in the far corner. A thin ledger marked disciplinary actions, staff and residents, 1,919, 1,932. She opened it, pages brittle, writing faded, but clear enough. Minor quarrels, fines, warnings, trivial matters that meant nothing, until she reached page 18. A line, a name, a note. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Edwin Hale, reprimand for misconduct at Rowanford Manor. Access restricted, privileges revoked. The entry was dated 12 years ago. The same Edwin Hale who collapsed that morning. Miss Marple traced the notation with a fingertip. Not to feel the ink, but to steady a thought. The record continued. Involvement with staff unrest. Suspected interference in locked storerooms. Locked storerooms. At Rowanford Manor. Then, and now. That detail connected too neatly, too naturally. Like a thread hidden for years, waiting to be pulled. She turned the page. Another entry. Another familiar name. Not Hale's. Someone else entirely. A person she had suspected earlier. A person who had reacted too sharply at the breakfast. The note was short, almost deliberately vague. Incident involving missing items. Matter closed off by Manor's request. Closed off, quieted, buried. Miss Marple closed the ledger gently, thoughts aligning. Years might pass in Rowanford, but actions rarely vanished. They simply slept, until someone shook them awake. She thanked Mr. Hollingby. He nodded, uneasy now. His fingers tapped his desk. A nervous beat he couldn't hide. Outside, she pulled her shawl closer. The air felt heavier. The manor looked different from this distance, not elegant, not warm, but watchful. She walked back toward it. Slow pace, determined mind. At the manor's side corridor, she paused at a door she had passed many times. A small wooden cupboard, always locked, always ignored by guests, always guarded by the staff, with a strange, quiet protectiveness. Miss Marple studied it now, with new eyes. The old record mentioned locked storerooms. This one was still locked, still avoided, still too important for a simple cupboard. Someone feared what was inside. Someone feared what it revealed. Someone feared the past she had just uncovered. She touched the handle lightly. Cold metal. No give. Locked tight, but not protected enough. Not from the truth. Not anymore. She stepped back, looked down the hallway, listened to the far-off murmur of the household. Pieces were shifting, old grievances pushing toward the surface, old mistakes calling out again. She straightened, her eyes calm, her mind certain. The past waited quietly, until today. Someone feared these records. The manor grew tighter as the afternoon light thinned. Not darker, just smaller. Rooms felt closer. Steps echoed sharper. People breathed quieter, as if silence might protect them. Miss Marple walked through the hall with soft steps. Every face she passed carried strain. Not mourning, not shock. Something closer to fear, and something deeper than fear. Suspect 1. Mr. Lenton. He tried to look calm, failed. His alibi had been confident that morning. I never left the breakfast room. But someone else had already whispered otherwise. A villager saw him step into the side corridor moments before the collapse. Moments. Too close. Miss Marple watched him now. His shoulders hunched, his jaw tight. He tapped his thumb against his wrist. A small, nervous tick. A man trying to hide something he wished he'd never done, or something he wished someone else hadn't seen. He looked up, met her eyes, looked away instantly. Broken alibis always avoided steady eyes. Suspect 2. Anna, the maid. She moved through the dining room like a ghost. Quick steps, hands clasped too tightly behind her. Head down, as if she wished to disappear into the wallpaper. She avoided Miss Marple entirely. Not just eye contact, the entire presence. People only avoided Miss Marple for one reason: fear she had already understood too much. Miss Marple paused near the doorway as Anna passed. The girl's breath shook, barely noticeable. But there, a trembling thread beneath every step. Anna knew something. Not hearsay, not rumor. Something she had seen, something she wished she could forget. Suspect 3, Mr. Gorse, the butler. Always composed, always stiff, always proper. Today he was more rigid than ever. A man built from iron, but iron rusts when pressure pushes long enough. His eyes kept drifting toward the service hallway, toward a narrow door, toward the bell tower's interior passage. The same bell tower that should have been empty, silent, locked. Miss Marple noticed the tiny smear of dust on his sleeve. Bell rope dust. Old, dry, distinct, almost invisible, but not to her. Mr. Gorse had been near the bell tower that morning. Too near. His controlled movements could not hide that truth. She stepped toward him. He stiffened further. His voice clipped. "Can I assist you, Miss Marple?" Polite words. Panicked tone. "No, thank you," she said gently. But she watched his eyes flick again toward the corridor. The link was clear. Hidden. But clear. Suspect 4. Mrs. Harglan. Her cheerfulness had cracked. Her smile came too fast, disappeared too quickly. Her hands trembled when she poured tea. She had known Hale for years. More than she admitted. More than she wished to explain. And her glance at Anna during the breakfast had not been a random concern. It had been fear. Miss Marple saw her now speaking to a villager. Soft voice. Tight fingers clutching a napkin. Eyes drifting to the staircase. Another place tied to secrets. Another place tied to Hale's past. Suspect 5. Mr. Dyer. Calm voice, but too calm. He answered questions before they were asked. Explained things no one requested. Overeager to appear helpful. Overeager people rarely were. Miss Marple stepped into the drawing room. The guests scattered instantly, like leaves caught in a sudden gust. No one wanted to be near her. No one wanted to be the next question mark. She stood near the fireplace, hands folded, watching the room from the corner again, her usual place. Every suspect carried a motive now. Small, large, hidden, half-formed, but present. Not fewer motives. More, many more. Each one sharp enough to cut the calm of the manor. And yet one motive rose above the rest, not shaped by fear, not shaped by guilt, not shaped by chance. A personal motive. One that reached deep into the past she had just uncovered. One that tied the locked cupboard, the old disciplinary note, and Hale's final moments. Miss Marple exhaled softly. She saw it clearly now. One person wasn't just scared. They were connected to Hale, to the bell, to the cupboard, to the morning itself. More motives appear, not fewer, and one motive is personal. The manor had quieted again, not peacefully, just heavily. A weight hung in the hallways, a nervous quiet that clung to every breath. Miss Marple waited near the back parlor. She knew the moment was coming. When fear grew too heavy, someone always broke first. And someone did. Anna, the maid, stepped into the room, eyes lowered, hands twisting the corner of her apron, shoulders tight with something she had carried far too long. "Miss Marple, may I speak?" Her voice was thin, barely a whisper, barely strong enough to hold the truth it carried. Miss Marple nodded gently. "Of course, dear." Anna Saturday, slowly, as if the chair might reject her. She looked at her hands, not at Miss Marple. Fear never looked up. "I didn't tell the inspector everything," she began. "I wanted to, but I couldn't." Miss Marple said nothing. Silence helped confessions grow. Anna swallowed hard. "It's about Mr. Hale, and the manor, and the cupboard." Miss Marple's eyes softened, not with surprise, with recognition. Anna continued, words trembling. "Mr. Hale, he wasn't a kind man. Years ago, before I started working here, he caused trouble in the house. The staff still talk about it. He ruined things, broke things, took things that weren't his. And the lady of the manor, Mrs. Rowanford, had to dismiss him quietly. Something about avoiding disgrace." Her fingers tightened around the apron, knuckles pale. "I found out months later, by accident. I saw his name in the old staff book when I was fetching linen records. I wasn't supposed to see it. Mr. Gorse told me to forget it, but I couldn't." She looked up for the first time. Her eyes glistened, not with grief, with guilt. "Then he returned to the village last year, acting like nothing had happened, and when the bell tower was locked for repairs, he kept asking questions about it, asking who had the key, asking if anyone stored things inside." Miss Marple leaned slightly forward, calm, listening. Anna's voice cracked. "1 week ago, I saw him near the cupboard in the service corridor, the locked one. I don't know how he got the key. I don't know what he wanted inside. But he was angry, furious. He said something was missing, something stolen, something he had hidden there years ago." She wiped her eyes, a messy, frightened gesture. "And that morning, before the breakfast, I saw him again. He wasn't pale. He wasn't weak. He was scared, Miss Marple, scared of someone in this house." A long silence rested between them, a deep one, a necessary one. Anna lowered her head. "I didn't say any of this to the inspector because I think I know who he feared, and I don't want to accuse the wrong person." Miss Marple reached over and placed her hand gently on Anna's. "You haven't accused anyone, child. You've only shared what you saw." Anna nodded, eyes full of regret. "I should have spoken sooner. Maybe it would have helped." Miss Marple shook her head softly. "Truth arrives when it chooses. You've done the right thing today." Anna's voice broke on the last words she managed to speak. He wasn't frightened of me. He wasn't frightened of the staff. He was frightened of someone upstairs. Upstairs, the one place she had not yet fully explored. The place tied to Hale's past. The place tied to the locked cupboard. The place tied to the person whose smile never matched the room. Anna rose, breathing unsteady, but lighter. The burden shifted from her shoulders onto the truth itself. A truth arrives, but not the truth. This confession exposes someone else. The bell tower stood at the far edge of the manor grounds, tall, cold, silent now, but only because someone wanted it silent. Miss Marple walked toward it with steady steps, not hurried, not hesitant. Steps shaped by certainty, the certainty that something began here before breakfast, before panic, before Hale's collapse. The tower door was locked, just as everyone claimed. A heavy iron lock, weathered, old, but not untouched. Miss Marple leaned closer. The dust along the hinges told its own story. A faint smear, a light trail. Someone had handled the door recently. Not days ago, not weeks ago, hours. She brushed her fingertips lightly along the edge of the frame. Dust clung to her glove except for one thin line, a perfect arc, where fingers had pushed someone had pulled the door halfway open, then closed it again. Quickly, quietly, with purpose. She walked around the base of the tower. Frost covered most of the stone pathway, but not all of it. There were 2 faint footprints near the wall, not big enough for men's boots, not small enough for a child. Someone with thin soles, someone trying not to be noticed. She stepped into the small side structure where the service ladder began. Dust coated the steps leading upward. Thick layers, but 2 rungs were different, wiped. Clear. Someone had climbed. Miss Marple lifted her eyes toward the rafters. A faint movement of dust drifted down, the kind that only fell when something above it had been disturbed recently. She climbed the first few rungs herself. Slow, careful. Her gloves brushed the wooden edges. Cold, dry, undisturbed except for one handprint higher up. Whoever climbed had done so early, before the frost melted, before the day changed. She reached the mid-level landing, a small wooden platform. The rope hung just beside it, thick, worn, but the fibers near the bottom were loose, disturbed. Someone had pulled it, hard. A single sharp pull, just enough to make the bell ring once. But why ring the bell? Why at dawn? Why only once? Miss Marple examined the rope more closely. A thin streak of dark dust pressed along one side. Dust from the inside of the tower. Old storage dust. Cupboard dust. The same kind she had seen on Mr. Gorse's sleeve. Her eyes softened. Not with surprise, with confirmation. Gorse had been near the rope. He had touched it, but the footprints outside were not his size. He had been in the tower, but someone else had rung the bell. 2 people had interacted with this place. Not one. Not the same person. She looked up toward the bell chamber. A single draft of cold wind drifted downward. Not natural. Someone had opened a ventilation hatch earlier. Someone trying to look outside discreetly. She stepped down and moved to the far wall at the base of the tower. There, hidden behind a loose board, she found something small, a scrap of paper, torn, wrinkled. The corner of a letter. A very old letter, matching the age of the disciplinary notes in the village record. A connection formed, clear, unavoidable. Someone had returned to the tower to check an old hiding place. Someone afraid Hale had found it first. Someone afraid of what was once kept here and what was missing now. The bell had not rung by accident. It had been a signal, a warning, a message, or a mistake, but it had meaning, and meaning in Rowanford never stayed buried for long. She stepped back from the tower, looked at the rope, the dust, the old paper, the footprints, pieces aligned. The morning bell was not a mystery sound. It was a deliberate action, a choice. A moment of fear or urgency. Miss Marple tightened her shawl. Cold wind brushed past her. Her mind sharpened. The bell rang for a reason, and the reason is not pleasant. Miss Marple arranged the tea table herself. A small round table, 4 chairs, a soft cloth, fresh biscuits set neatly on a plate, nothing dramatic, just enough comfort to lower defenses. She waited until the room settled, until the whispers faded, until the suspects could not avoid her invitation. One by one they entered. Mr. Lenton, Anna, Mrs. Harglin, Mr. Gorse. 4 people, 4 stories, 4 lies, different shapes, different weights. Miss Marple poured the tea calmly. No rush, no raised voice, just quiet hospitality that made tension louder by contrast. "Please, sit," she said gently. They did, awkwardly, as if the chairs themselves were traps. The room was still. Only the small crackle from the hearth broke the hush. Steam curled upward from the teacups. The biscuits smelled warm and soft. Miss Marple folded her hands. Her eyes moved from one face to another, slow, steady, knowing. "We must speak plainly," she began. A simple sentence, but it tightened every spine around the table. She looked at Mr. Lenton first. "You told the inspector you never left the breakfast room." He swallowed. A small movement, barely noticeable, but full of fear. That wasn't entirely true, was it? His breath hitched. His hands curled around the teacup, but he said nothing. Silence could be as revealing as speech. Miss Marple turned her eyes to Anna. "Child, you saw Mr. Hale near the locked cupboard. You feared what he might find." Anna's eyes widened. Her fingers trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, but no words came. Miss Marple's tone stayed kind. "But you did nothing wrong. Fear is not guilt." Anna lowered her head. Tears threatened. Not guilt relief. Someone finally understood. Next, Miss Marple faced Mrs. Harglin. "You knew Hale years ago, more closely than you pretend." Mrs. Harglin's smile broke, cracked clean through the middle. Her breath shook. Her knuckles whitened as she clutched her napkin. "You hid it this morning," Miss Marple continued softly, "because admitting it would expose someone else." A sharp gasp escaped her. She almost spoke, almost answered, but she stopped herself, pushed her lips together tightly. Miss Marple watched her, not with accusation, with understanding. Then she turned to Mr. Gorse. The butler sat like a statue, jaw tight, eyes fixed on his teacup, but his sleeve told more truth than his silence ever could. "The tower dust on your coat," Miss Marple said quietly. "You were in the bell tower this morning." He flinched, very slightly, but enough. "That tower has only one upper latch," she continued, "and only one person in this room is tall enough to reach it." A crack appeared in his composure. His throat bobbed. His fingers twitched on the tablecloth. "You did not ring the bell," she said. Her voice turned colder. "But you know who did." A pulse of panic moved across the table. Small gasps, tensed shoulders, a shifting of feet. A quiet room filled suddenly with silent fear. Miss Marple leaned back. Her voice remained soft, almost gentle. "Someone here knows too much." No one spoke. No one dared. Even the fire seemed to. "Wait." Miss Marple folded her hands again. Calm, patient, certain. "4 lies," she said softly, "but only one lie hides the truth." She let the silence grow. Let it stretch toward the edges of the room. Let it press against each person at the table. Mrs. Harglin's breath shook again. Anna wiped her eyes. Mr. Lenton shifted in his chair. "Mr. Lenton." Gorse stared at the wall. Then a sound. A small inhale. Someone about to speak. A confession hovered in the air, half-formed, too fragile to survive a moment longer. Miss Marple turned her head slightly, just enough to focus on the one who made the sound. Their lips moved almost. A word almost escaped. Almost. But fear shut it down. The word died before it reached the air. "Someone here knows too much, and one of them almost speaks." The house felt sharper now. Sharper than fear, sharper than rumor. the kind of sharpness that comes when truth begins to push upward through layers of silence. Miss Marple left the tea room slowly. She needed space to think. A quiet hallway, a simple chair by the window, nothing more. The pieces finally aligned. Not perfectly yet, but enough. Enough to see the shape of the truth. She replayed the morning in her mind. Not the collapse, not the panic, but the movements, the positions, the hands. Every lie made sense now. Every contradiction fit a larger pattern. The shock was not how Hale died. The shock was how many people had helped the moment along. Unintentionally, indirectly, but helped nonetheless. First piece. Hale had enemies here. Quiet ones, old ones, small grudges that festered over years. Second piece. Someone poisoned the juice. But the person who poisoned it did not intend to kill Hale. Not him, not that morning. The poison was meant for someone else entirely. A revenge attempt, a punishment. Something cruel but not fatal, just enough to make someone ill. A cruel trick, not a murder attempt. Third piece. The glass Hale drank from had not been his. He had taken it, switched it, reached for the wrong one. Or rather, reached for the one someone else placed near him. Miss Marple saw it clearly now. The hesitation before Mr. Dyer grabbed the glass. The small stained mark on one rim. The way Anna gasped when Hale chose it. The panic that flickered through Mrs. Hargland's eyes. The glass was meant for another guest. A mild poison. Not deadly, but Hale drank it anyway. Yet that poison alone hadn't killed him. The collapse had been too sudden, too final, too clean. Fourth piece. Someone switched Hale's glass on purpose, but not the poisoner. Someone else. Someone whose motive was tied to the past. Someone Hale feared. Someone he'd argued with near the locked cupboard. Someone who didn't want the truth from years ago to surface. A second substance. Not a poison. Something Hale was allergic to. Something subtle. A trigger. A calculated substitution that turned the harmless dose into a fatal shock. Without the first poison, the second substance would have done nothing. Without the second substance, the first poison would only have made him ill. Together, two actions by two different people created one result. A death made by many hands, but not many killers. One person had used the morning's chaos to push Hale toward the wrong glass. One person had watched him make the fatal choice. And one person, the most dangerous person, had stayed silent when he collapsed. Because silence can kill faster than poison, Miss Marple stood from her chair. Her steps purposeful now. She moved toward the service corridor again, the place where Hale had last been seen alive and frightened. The place tied to the locked cupboard. The place tied to the person whose alibi was too clean. She paused before the cupboard door. The cold metal, the dust, the faint imprint where someone had touched it that very morning. A death made by many hands, but rooted in one old secret. One hidden grievance. One festering betrayal. One silence that let hatred grow until it tipped into disaster. She pressed her hand gently against the wood, not to open it, to acknowledge it. The past always had its echo, and today it had screamed. Miss Marple whispered softly to no one and everyone. The poisoner was not the killer, and the killer did not poison the drink. The truth was layered, twisted, interlocked. Each person trying to protect themselves had unknowingly pushed Hale closer to his death. She turned away from the cupboard, her eyes steady now. She knew exactly whom to confront next, and she knew exactly what they had done and what they had failed to do. A death made by many hands, but one silence caused everything. The drawing room felt smaller with everyone inside. Chairs lined in a rough circle, faces pale, hands tight around cups they barely touched. Inspector Graves stood near the prude mantel, silent, waiting. He had questions, but he knew the answers would not come from him. They would come from Miss Marple. She sat in her usual place, a little to the side, not at the head. Calm, neat, certain. I think, she began softly. "We must put the pieces in their proper order." No one spoke. No one moved. "The bell," she said, rang first. Her eyes went briefly to Mr. Gorse. He shifted. Just enough. "It rang," she continued, "because someone climbed the inner ladder at dawn and pulled the rope, but not to announce a death. There was no death yet. It rang to give a warning." She let that settle. The warning was meant for Mr. Hale. A murmur ran through the room. Hale was not popular, but warnings implied concern, or fear. "Years ago," Miss Marple went on, "Mr. Hale used the manor, its cupboards, its tower, for his own hidden purposes. He was dismissed quietly. The records show it, yet he returned, and he believed something. He once hid here, was still waiting for him." Her gaze moved calmly across the circle. "Someone here knew that truth. Someone here went to the tower early. Someone here rang the bell to frighten him, to send a message, leave the past alone. Do not open the locked places again." She paused. That was not murder. That was fear. Then she turned slightly. "Now, the glass." Several people stiffened. "One of you prepared a drink meant to make another guest ill, not to kill. A petty revenge. A spiteful plan. An ugly trick, yes, but not a deadly one. You added something to a single glass. You placed it where that person always sits. You trusted habit." Her eyes rested for a moment too long on Mrs. Harglin. "But habit failed you, because Mr. Hale took the glass instead." A sharp breath left someone's throat. "He drank what was not meant for him. And still, that alone would not have killed him." She folded her hands. "The true killer did something else." Quietly, calmly. They moved a second substance into Hale's reach. Something they knew his body would not tolerate. Something that would turn a cruel joke into a fatal collapse. Her tone stayed light. They did not need to deliver it themselves. They only needed to make sure that, once the wrong glass was in his hand, nothing stopped him from drinking. Her gaze settled now. Exact. Unblinking. Someone wanted to scare him away from the past. Someone wanted to punish another guest. Someone wanted to keep an old secret buried. And someone only needed to stay silent as everything unfolded. She drew a slow breath. "The plan was never murder," she said quietly. Her next words hung over the room like a held breath. But murder happened anyway. The manor had fallen into the kind of silence that follows truth. Not calm, not comfort, but the stillness after something heavy drops. Miss Marple walked down the corridor alone. No haste, no anger, just purpose. She knew exactly where the quiet enabler would be. Not hiding, not running, sitting, waiting for the moment they knew was coming. The small reading room door was half open. A soft lamp glowed inside, and there, in the corner chair, sat Mr. Gorse. Back straight, hands folded, face empty of denial, full of exhaustion. Miss Marple stepped in. He didn't look up. Not at first. Only when she closed the door gently behind her did his eyes lift. Slow, heavy. "You knew," she said softly. A simple sentence. A quiet one. Enough to make his shoulders sag. He didn't argue, didn't protest, didn't invent alibis. "I didn't poison him," he whispered. "No," Miss Marple replied. "I know." He swallowed. A tiny motion, but full of weight. "You didn't move the harmful substance into his reach." Another pause. Another truth. "That too I know." His eyes closed briefly. A flicker of relief. A flicker of shame. "But you did nothing to stop him," she continued gently. "And that is where everything changed." Mr. Gorse opened his eyes. Red, rimmed, haunted. "I saw him take the wrong glass," he whispered. "I saw the girl try to warn him. I saw the fear in Mrs. Harglin's face. I knew something was wrong, something terribly wrong, but—" His voice cracked. He looked down, hands trembling now. "I didn't want the past opened again." Miss Marple stepped closer. Not angry, not harsh, just present. "You feared what he would dig up." "Yes." A broken whisper. "I feared what it would mean for the house, for the staff, for all of us. If he exposed what happened years ago, everything would fall apart again." "And so," Miss Marple said gently, You stayed silent. He nodded. Slow. Painfully slow. I thought, if he fell ill, he might leave. If he left, the old secrets would stay buried. I didn't know he'd die. Miss Marple took a breath. Not to sigh, but to steady the truth. Others acted in fear. Others acted in spite. But you, her voice softened further, almost a whisper. You acted in certainty. You believed letting him drink was safer than stopping him. His face crumpled. A quiet collapse. No sobbing. No wailing. Just a man realizing the weight of his choice. You didn't kill him, she said, but your silence let the moment become fatal. He nodded again. A small, devastated motion. Inspector Graves stepped into the doorway. He had heard enough. His expression held no triumph, only the gravity of consequence. Mr. Gorse lifted his hands, not in surrender, in acceptance. He did not ask to be forgiven. He did not try to explain again. Truth had been spoken, and that was all that mattered now. Miss Marple stepped back, her voice low, steady. Justice is not loud. The inspector moved forward. The room tightened. Mr. Gorse closed his eyes as if bracing for a storm made of silence, not thunder. Miss Marple opened the door for them both. Quietly, respectfully. As they walked out, she whispered just one final line, soft, certain, steady. But it lands. Snow drifted lightly over Rowanford. Soft, slow, quiet enough to hear each breath. The burial was small. A simple grave. A simple service. No grand speeches. No long apologies. Inspector Graves stood at the back, hands clasped, face unreadable. Mrs. Harglin wiped her eyes, not just for Hale, but for the fear she carried. Mr. Lenton kept his head low. Shame flickered across his face. He had lied. He knew it. And the cold made the truth sharper. Anna stood beside Miss Marple, silent, still trembling. Her regret lingered, even now. Miss Marple watched the small group. Their breaths clouded the air. Their choices hung heavier than the snow. Some mourned the man. Some mourned their choices. Some wished the morning had gone differently. Some wished their secrets had stayed hidden. The vicar's final prayer faded. One handful of earth fell. Soft. Final. The sound landed like a quiet judgment. People drifted away slowly. Steps muffled. Voices low. No one eager to return to the manor. Miss Marple remained. Eyes calm. Hands folded. She watched the grave alone for a long moment. Because one person, one very careful person, could not forget. Davis's voice returns, soft and steady tonight. Thank you for staying through every quiet step of this mystery, for every glance, every bell toll, every cup on the table. Tell me, which clue stood out to you the most? Was it the single bell at dawn, the trembling maid, the dust on a butler's sleeve, or the glass that moved when no one was watching? And where are you listening from tonight? A small room? A busy city? A quiet village that might hold its own secrets? I'm grateful you shared this evening with us. Rowanford can rest, for now. But somewhere else, another village is waiting. Another story is beginning to stir. Another bell is hanging silent. Another secret sits behind a locked door. Another cup waits on a lonely table. Tomorrow, another quiet village. Another quiet secret. And as always, remember, stay close. Tomorrow, another kettle will boil.